Have you ever sat around a campfire deep in the woods and felt your voice get lost in the trees? Have you ever heard an old radio crackle back to life in the middle of the night, playing a broadcast that wasn't meant to exist? What would you do if the forest itself started playing your worst mistakes over and over again, and you couldn't tell the past from the present? Tonight's story takes you to an abandoned scout camp where time is fragmented, memories fade into darkness, and every crackle on the forest radio loses a new soul to the static. If you like gripping, spine-chilling horror stories presented like real experiences, please subscribe. It's completely free and helps me reach 500 subscribers so I can bring you new nightmares every day. Let me know when and where you're watching in the comments. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let's head to the camp that broadcasts your doom. My name is Riley Prescott. I investigate lost places, and this time, my target was Echo Ridge Camp, abandoned since 1978 after 3 scouts vanished overnight with only their tapes left behind. I assembled a small crew. Jesse Morales, sound engineer with a taste for the weird. Harper Lee, a cryptographer who can decipher any puzzle. Dante Rossi, a documentary filmmaker chasing haunted legends. We drove 2 days into Montana's Bitterroot Mountains, then hiked 5 miles along a river gorge until an old wooden sign emerged from dense brush. Echo Ridge Camp, established 1952. Beneath it, someone had spray-painted one word in red. Listen. Beyond the sign lay 6 log cabins in a semicircle. Their windows were boarded, doors hung from one hinge. The air smelled of damp wood and rot. Jesse found an old crank-dial radio in the main lodge. When he turned the knob, all we heard was static, until, at exactly 11:13 p.m., a faint female voice whispered, "They're back in the meadow. Find the girl with no name." The static flared, then cut out. We exchanged uneasy glances. That voice shouldn't have been there. We were miles from any broadcast tower. On our second day, Harper spotted footprints in the tall grass north of camp, bare feet, small, like a child's. They led to a clearing where the moonlight revealed an old girl's dress pinned to a tree by a rusted arrowhead. Engraved on the hem was a name, Marcy, one of the missing scouts from 1978. No body was ever found. Harper shuddered as she ran her finger along the stitching and whispered, "Someone wants us to remember her." That night, the radio crackled to life again. This time, we heard Marcy's voice, soft and crackling. "They're hungry, don't fall asleep." Over the next 2 nights, each of us slept for only minutes before being jolted awake by our own names echoing across the static. In my dreams, I was back home, my apartment, my late sister's voice calling me. And then I'd wake in the cabin, the door banging, the radio shrieking my name. Jesse's recorder captured these dream calls on playback. "Riley, you left her alone." "Jesse, you whispered his name." "Harper, you broke the code." "Dante, you never filmed the truth." Every accusation fed the static until the lodge's floorboards vibrated like a speaker. On the 5th night, we decided to confront the phenomenon. At midnight, we climbed to the ridge behind camp, carrying the radio. A cold wind ripped through the pines as we tuned slowly through the frequencies. Suddenly, the static coalesced into a chorus of voices, dozens of them, overlapping. "We're hungry, we need her name." "Find Marcy, we remember." The wind died. The night went silent. Then one distinct voice, Marcy's clear and childlike, whispered, "I'm sorry." The radio sparked and died. At dawn, we found the meadow overgrown, no sign of the pinned dress, no footprints. Only the faint smell of lavender, Marcy's favorite, hung in the air. Harper discovered a weather journal half buried under ferns. Inside were entries from 1978, written in a child's scrawl. "They told me to play hide and seek. They never said I couldn't hide forever." The final page was blank, except for one line scrawled in red ink. "Find me, or become me." Desperate, we opened the lodge's storage room, now a cramped echo chamber of peeling wallpaper and dusty cots. Dante set up his camera as we placed the radio on a cot and tuned to the last static bursting frequency. Jesse stamped his foot and shouted, "Marcy, we're here! What do you want?" Silence. Then footsteps, slow, dragging, approaching from the back of the room. A figure stepped into the dim green glow of the radio's dial. A little girl in a dusty dress, her eyes empty black pits. She raised one pale finger to her lips and slowly shook her head. Before we could move, the door slammed shut. The radio ignited, blasting our own names at deafening volume. Dante's camera fell, filming only the swirling static as screams echoed into the night. I don't recall fleeing. I only remember stumbling back to the cabins, heart hammering. The static still buzzed in my ears, my name on an endless loop. Dante and Jesse were nowhere to be found. Harper lay on the floor of cabin 3, eyes open, staring blankly at the wall. When she spoke, it was with Marcy's voice. "We forgot her name again." Then she sat up, writing in the cabin's dust. "Her name is Marcy." We tried to leave. The trail back to the river had vanished. Every path led us in circles, returning to the lodge. At 3:33 a.m., the radio began on its own. This time it played the same campfire song we'd sung on our first night, distorted, slow, and warped. Over the melody, a child's laughter. Again, again. Step by step, the voices joined in, like a haunting chorus echoing through the pines. On the 10th night, I am alone. Harper is gone. Marcy took her. Dante and Jesse may still wander, caught in the static loop. I clutched the radio, waiting for one last message. As the clock strikes midnight, the static clears. A soft, sorrowful voice speaks. "Now you're here, forever echoing. Your last name is mine." The radio crackles, then plays our screams on an endless loop. If you ever discover an old radio in an abandoned camp, and it calls your name, don't answer. Because Echo Ridge doesn't just trap your body. It traps your voice, your soul, on a loop of static forever. Have you ever set up camp in a place so remote the only sound was your own breathing, until the forest started to mimic it back? Have you ever played a game around the fire, only to realize the night itself was playing you? And what if, at dawn, you woke to find your own tent, flap stained with your handwriting, spelling out a name you've never heard? Tonight's tale is about a scout camp where nothing is as it seems, and everyone leaves with something extra. If you crave original, bone-chilling horror stories that wrap around your mind and never let go, please subscribe. It's completely free, and I'm aiming for 500 subscribers so I can keep sharing the darkest corners of the wilderness. Now, dim the lights, put your headphones on, and follow me into the camp that reflects your fear. My name is Maya Sinclair. Last summer, I pitched a documentary idea. Hollow Creek Camp, lost scout troops and vanished counselors. I recruited 3 friends. We arrived at the abandoned camp under a sapphire sky. The entrance sign read, Hollow Creek Camp, but every letter beyond the first 2 was scraped away, leaving just Ho-P. Ezra jogged ahead, camera rolling. As he stepped through the gate, a hush fell, and we heard it, a soft voice, echoing from the pines. Welcome home, campers. No one spoke. We exchanged uneasy looks. The forest seemed to shimmer around us. Hollow Creek was built in the 1940s. A network of cabins, a dining hall with a cracked window, and a small lake nicknamed Glass Water for its still surface. Sophia discovered something odd in Cabin 7, a wall lined with tarnished hand mirrors, dozens of them, each inscribed with a name and date. All dates fell between 1945 and 1970. One read, Ezra Vogel, July 12, 1952. Exactly 73 years ago. Sophia gasped. That's his birthday. We laughed nervously, until we shone our flashlights on our reflections. In each mirror, behind us, stood a shadowy figure, hunched, faceless, swaying to a silent rhythm. We darted out into the night, hearts pounding. At dusk, we built a fire by Glass Water. Kenji pulled out his recorder. Ezra set up his camera. Sophia held an antique mirror she'd pocketed. I suggested an old campfire game. Mirror, mirror in the night. You stare into the fire's reflection in the mirror and ask a question. If the mirror fogs, you don't get an answer. If it clears, you behold the truth. Sophia went first. Mirror, mirror in the night, who among us hides from sight? Her breath plumed in the mirror's glow. The glass steamed, then cleared. In the flame's reflection, Sophia's face split in half, one side grinning, the other hollow-eyed. She screamed, dropping the mirror. It shattered, embedding splinters of glass into the ash. We scrambled back, but that was only the beginning. At 2:23 a.m., Kenji's recorder crackled to life with rippling static, then faint splashes. He bolted awake and shone his light toward Glass Water. On the bank were 6 footprints, barefoot and wet, but only 4 of us were there. Sophia whispered, Someone else is here. We crept to the lake's edge. The water was perfectly still, no ripples. But when Ezra dropped a pebble, the surface didn't shatter, it sang, like a tuning fork. Then we heard laughter, childlike, echoing from beneath the water. We retreated to our tents, hearts pounding like tribal drums. I woke at 3:33 a.m. to find my tent flap moving. I unzipped and stepped out. The campsite was empty. Moonlight outlined the mirrors from Cabin 7, now hung from tree branches, swaying in the breeze. Each one caught the fire's glow, illuminating faces that weren't ours, lost scouts, counselors, and creatures half seen. In the largest mirror, I saw myself, except behind me stood a girl in an old scout uniform, her eyes black as glass water, hand outstretched, beckoning. I blinked, and she was gone. At dawn, we reached Glass Water by flashlight. The mirrors were gone, but a new object lay at the lake's center, a small rowboat, perfectly intact, with our names carved on the oars. No footprints led to it. No oar marks in the grass. Yet it floated waiting. Sophia insisted we investigate. We paddled to the middle. The lake's surface reflected the sky like a broken screen. Ezra held the mirror up to the water. The reflection didn't match. Instead of our faces, we saw scenes. Sophia, alone in Cabin 7, the floor ankle-deep in mirrors. Kenji, his recorder playing a child's lullaby. Maya and me, scribbling frantic journal entries in blood-red ink. Ezra, suspended above the lake, screaming. The oars clunked as if another presence rowed. The boat drifted back to shore before we could move. That day, Kenji unearthed a hatch beneath the boathouse floorboards, an iron ring and rotted planks. We pried it open and descended a ladder into darkness. Below lay a subterranean chamber lit by phosphorescent fungi. The walls were stacked with hundreds of mirrors, each one flickering with an image, past campers, ceremonies, faces warped by terror. In the center stood a mirror altar, a tall reflective shard with no frame. Carved at its base. "Reflect your fear, and you shall join us." Sophia reached out to touch it. I grabbed her wrist. In her palm lay a sliver of the mirror, blood red. She whispered, "It wants a sacrifice." At nightfall, the forest echoed our footsteps. We returned to the chamber with lanterns. Ezra filmed as Sophia placed the mirror sliver on the altar. The fungi flared, illuminating a pit beneath the altar, filled with water dark as ink. A voice emerged from the pit, ours overlapping. "Fear, become forever." The chamber shook. The mirrors around us cracked, webbing like shattered dreams. Kenji grabbed Sophia and ran up, but Ezra was rooted, eyes glued to the altar. I screamed, too late. He touched the shard. "I see everything you hide." He raised his arm, and the shard fused into his wrist, becoming him. He advanced toward us, voice hollow. "Now join me." Sophia and Kenji backed away. I lunged for Ezra's camera and smashed it into the altar. The chamber trembled. "Ezra, Mirror Ezra," shrieked, a high keening that rattled the fungi. We fled up the ladder, hearts hammering, hands streaked with phosphorescent slime. We burst into the clearing. The camp was silent, too silent. The mirrors from the chamber had emerged, dangling from every branch, reflecting 1,000 Euclidean nightmares. Sophia collapsed, tears running. Kenji threw down his recorder. It crackled and then replayed our screams. I held Ezra's stripped camera, still projecting static. We ran toward the entrance gate, but the sign read, "Ho-P." Again, letters rearranged. "Hopeless." Behind us, Mirror Ezra stepped into view, cracked smile glinting. At dawn's first light, we stumbled onto an overgrown service road. Mirrors littered the ground, shattered, dull, lifeless. We didn't look back. Weeks later, I reviewed the footage I salvaged. Between static bursts, I saw a final image, my reflection, grinning with black eyes, raising a mirror shard to the camera. I deleted the file. Hollow Creek Camp still exists, in the pines, in the static, in every mirror you glance at in the dark. If you ever find yourself alone with your own reflection, and it tries to smile back with eyes that aren't yours, run. Have you ever smelled wildflowers so sweet they made your head spin, even though it's the dead of night? Have you ever heard the wind rustle through petals, and thought it was calling your name? And what would you do if the forest itself began to grow around you, trapping you in an endless maze of thorn vines? Tonight's story will take you to Camp Verdant Echo, where the very plants have learned how to survive, by becoming predators. If you love truly original horror stories delivered in the dark, immersive style, please subscribe. It's completely free, and every subscription helps me hit 500 subscribers so I can keep bringing you fresh nightmares each week. Now turn out the lights, put on your headphones, and step carefully into the camp that blooms with terror. Last spring, I received a cryptic email. Join us at Camp Verdant Echo. We've discovered a new species of night-blooming orchid. Help us catalog it, if you dare. I brought along Ethan Marsh, an American mycologist curious about fungal symbiosis. Soraya Khan, an Indian ecologist who studies invasive plants. Lucas Novak, a Czech photographer drawn to unexplained phenomena. We drove to a remote valley in the Olympic Mountains, pitched our tents beside a field of overgrown greenery, and found dozens of unopened buds glowing faintly under the moonlight. On our first night, we heard it, a soft, rhythmic hum drifting through the foliage, like a lullaby sung by flowers. Ethan recorded it on his hydrophone. He swore it carried complex harmonies, almost musical. Soraya leaned close to a bud and whispered, "These petals, they feel alive." At midnight, the buds unfurled with a whoosh of air, releasing a cloud of golden pollen. The fragrance was intoxicating, warm honey, wet earth, cinnamon. When Lucas breathed it in and exhaled, his words came out in someone else's voice. He sputtered, "What did I just say?" Over the next 2 days, the plants grew at an alarming rate. Vines crept up trees, flowers erupted along the trail, and every time we tried to mark our path with ribbons, the ribbons were shredded by thorn tendrils before morning. At dusk on day 3, we wandered off-trail and discovered a circular clearing ringed entirely by this new orchid, 20 feet high. In the center, a stone basin filled with rainwater reflected the glowing blossoms. Soraya dipped her hand in the basin and swore she saw her own reflection, but older, eyes hollow. She jerked back, nearly falling. That night, Ethan's tent door flapped. We rushed to find him on his knees, pressing his ear to the ground. When he stood, his grin was too wide. "They're speaking to me, the roots." He pressed the hydrophone to his neck and played back his recording. Beneath the orchid song was a whisper. "Stay with us." We tried to pack up, but our gear had been entwined by vines, lash thorns pinning our backpacks to trees. On day 4, each orchid bud produced a single crimson stamen, a pollen-tipped filament that dripped a sticky nectar. Lucas tasted his, then collapsed, murmuring, "I remember their hunger." He woke with new memories, of digging in this very soil decades ago, planting something, he couldn't recall what. Soraya theorized the plants were parasites on memory, feeding on our life stories to fuel their growth. That night, we lit a small campfire to burn away the vines. The flames danced green in the pollen-saturated air. But the fire grew instead of shrinking, the logs expanding as if sprouted from living wood. The vines backed away, then lunged in unison, snuffing the fire and plunging us into darkness. In the fire's last glow, we saw dozens of orchid blooms facing us, each stamen dripping black nectar. At dawn, we stumbled into a hidden grove. Bones lay scattered among the roots, skeletal remains of past explorers, each wrapped in thorny stems, their skulls crowned with orchid petals. Ethan fell to his knees, vomiting pollen. Soraya gathered a long root, bright white, and carved a sigil of salt into the dirt. "Roots that feed on blood, be bound by earth and salt." The ground trembled, and the vines reeled back, revealing a buried hatch beneath the petals. We pried open the hatch and descended into a low-ceilinged tunnel, illuminated by bioluminescent mushrooms. At the end lay a concrete chamber lined with pots, each with a label in faded ink. Subject 12, Dr. Martin Reyes, 1986. Subject 27, Emily Zhang, 2003. In each pot, an orchid bud rested on a bed of human ashes. Soraya whispered, "They've been farming us." The chamber's door sealed behind us. In the center, a giant orchid bud the size of a man's torso. It opened with an unsettling groan, releasing a hurricane of pollen. We scrambled, but the spores stuck to our clothes, our hair, our skin. In the haze, the plants outside quivered, their growth accelerating, roots shaking the support beams. We struck torches from fallen beams and carved a path back to the hatch, brandishing the flaming wood. The vines burst through the pots in the tunnel, massive, thorned ropes lashing out. Soraya lit salt around the rim. The floor shuddered as every vein of vine recoiled. We emerged into blinding daylight. The orchids in the clearing lay wilted, black petals crumbling away like ash. We fled down the creek bed, leaving behind charred roots and shattered pots. Back at civilization, we found our journals blank, every entry erased except for one phrase scrawled in pollen dust. We bloom because you remember. Lucas's camera recorded only static. Ethan's hydrophone played the orchid lullaby on a loop. Soraya's samples dissolved into soil. And I still wake at night smelling sweet honey and cinnamon, though there are no flowers near my bed. If you ever encounter an orchid glowing in the dark, or hear a lullaby woven from petals, run. Because at Camp Verdant Echo, the plants don't just photosynthesize. They remember you, and they need you to survive. Have you ever woken to find your gear rearranged, though you're certain you left it in a neat pile? Have you ever heard the creak of wooden joints in the night, when there's no wind to blame? And what if the trees around your campsite began to echo laughter, long after you'd hung your hammock? Tonight's story takes you to Camp Marionette, where every puppet hung on the trees has a story, and each story wants a new ending. If you crave deeply original, bone-chilling campfire horror tales, subscribe. It's completely free, and helps me hit 500 subscribers so I can keep weaving fresh nightmares for your headphones. Now, dim the lights, put on your headphones, and follow me into the camp where your every move is a performance. I discovered Camp Marionette after unearthing a 1922 newspaper clipping about a traveling puppet troupe that vanished overnight. Locals said the troupe built a hideaway camp deep in Oregon's coastal woods, then simply disappeared, leaving their handcrafted marionettes behind. We arrived under a slate sky, following an overgrown gravel road to a clearing filled with dozens of wooden puppets, marionettes carved from cedar, each suspended by frayed hemp strings from low-hanging branches. Their painted faces bore joyous expressions, too lasting for wood left out in the rain. Raphael ran a gloved finger over one puppet's crimson coat. "These are fresh carvings, not 90-year-old relics." On our first night, we set up tents at the perimeter. At exactly 11:11 p.m., Layla's recorder crackled to life with the sound of tiny wooden feet tapping on bark. We heard a murmured applause, then a child's voice singing a lilting melody. "Strings in the shadows, play your part. Dance till the dawn, break every heart." We rushed outside. Under the puppet-lit canopy, the marionettes had shifted. Some were now seated around a stump stage, others bowed as though mid-curtain call. No breeze had stirred, their limbs moved of their own accord. Mika captured the tableau on her night vision rig, dozens of empty eyes glinting in the dark. The next day, Raphael discovered a junked projector at the edge of the clearing, its reel slot empty but wiring intact. He theorized the troupe used film alongside puppetry. He rigged a makeshift translucent screen between two trees and loaded his GoPro, hoping to catch the marionettes in action. That night, we powered the projector. Faded frames flickered to life, black and white footage of the original puppet troupe performing an eerie play called The Last Master. In the film, a puppet master carved a final marionette from a live volunteer, revealing bone and sinew where paint and wood once were. Suddenly, our projector sputtered. On screen, the final frame stretched into a still image of our own campsite, populated by 4 new marionettes, each bearing our faces. At 2:02 a.m., Layla woke us with a whisper. She'd heard voices in the trees, Puppet Master's instructions in hushed tones. We emerged to find our 10 sky ropes replaced with thick hemp strings, leading directly to individual marionettes. When I tugged my tent line free, the puppet I'd inadvertently tugged took a step forward, its wooden mouth opening in a silent gasp. Raphael saw its carved jaw creak as though speaking, though no sound came. Panicked, We gathered and cut every string, but as each puppet fell, its limbs twisted into impossible angles, then lay still once more. Desperate, Mika suggested we perform a show of our own, hoping to appease the puppets and regain control. We gathered lanterns and fashioned a simple script. Mika walks on stage, a flat rock, and greets the audience. Layla plays a lullaby on a harmonica. Raphael builds a puppet from sticks. Simone reads from the original troup's journal. We began at midnight. The puppets watched, rows of vacant faces. When I read the troupe's final line, the master steps down, the performer takes the strings. Every puppet turned in unison, tilting its head. The campfire sputtered, casting grotesque shadows. A crack split the sky. A single marionette, taller than the rest and clad in a tattered red coat, detached its strings and stepped toward us. Its painted eyes bled ebony tears. It raised a wooden hand and beckoned Raphael forward. He froze, then walked in perfect puppet cadence, until the red-coated figure plucked a new set of strings from the forest floor and draped them over Raphael's shoulders. He didn't resist. Layla and Mika screamed and attacked the marionette with an axe. The wooden master crumbled to kindling, revealing a hollow chest cavity. But Raphael still stood, lifelessly attached to the strings. I grabbed a discarded carving knife from my pack and cut one string at a time. With each severed line, Raphael jerked, then took a natural, living breath. At 3:33 a.m., the final string snapped. Raphael collapsed free. Mika and Layla caught him as dozens of other marionettes fell silent. The clearing went still. At dawn, we burned the fallen puppets and the shattered projector. We buried the ashes in a pit lined with salt and ran until the forest thinned. Back in civilization, I returned to my journal and found a single line scrawled in fine wood dust. The master hides in every cut string. Sometimes, I feel a tickle at my fingertips, as though tiny wooden joints are flexing under my skin. And I know, Camp Marionette never really let us leave the stage. If you ever find a clearing hung with wooden puppets, and you hear the soft tap of tiny feet at midnight, don't step into the circle. Because at Camp Marionette, the strings never truly break, and they always find a new master. Have you ever seen the night sky rain glowing symbols, and wondered if the forest itself was trying to speak? Have you ever woken to find strange runes carved into your skin, though you never touched a blade? And what would you do if writing a single word could reshape reality, and bind you to the woods forever? Tonight's story takes you to Camp Glyphfall, where every mark matters, and every symbol seals your fate. If you crave truly original, skin-crawling campfire horror tales, please subscribe. It's completely free, and helps me hit 500 subscribers so I can keep bringing you fresh nightmares each week. Now turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and follow me into the camp where the forest writes back. I'm Dr. Celeste Morgan, a cryptographer who deciphers ancient languages. But nothing could prepare me for the glowing runes that fell from the sky one September evening at Camp Glyphfall. I'd gathered 3 colleagues for a lore expedition in the remote Cascades. Just after sunset, a faint hum sounded overhead. Lantern light revealed drifting shapes, tiny wreaths of light spiraling downward like fireflies. As they landed in the clearing, we saw they were runic symbols, glowing blue, etched into bark, grass, even onto bare rocks. Mina whispered, "These runes, they're telling us something." At midnight, each of us awoke to discover a rune carved into our forearm, luminous yet cool to the touch. We convened by the fire. Haruto traced the pattern in the dirt. "This one means anchored. It won't let you leave." When Riley tried to erase it with water, the runes sank deeper into her skin, like liquid ink evaporating into flesh. Mina consulted her lore notes and said, "In old mountain myths, Glyphfall was a site where the earth spoke, and whoever heard its words became part of its story." On day 2, Haruto climbed a nearby ridge to survey the phenomenon. He returned with a makeshift map, dozens of runes marked around the camp in concentric patterns, each shape different, each glowing brighter at night. He said, "They are forming a sigil, a giant glyph that spans the entire valley." That evening, we huddled around the map. I noticed our names scrawled beneath 4 of the stones, linked by lines that converged at the clearing's center. Riley shivered. "It's like we're the keystones." On day 3, the forest spoke. Not birds or wind, but whispers carried on a cold breeze. "Write your truth, or be written away." We realized the runes demanded we confess our darkest secret, etched in elderwood bark with a charcoal stick we found tied to a tree. Mina went first. She scratched a single word beneath her rune. "Guilty." Immediately, the forest fell silent. Then the rune on her arm faded. Next was Haruto. He etched, "Liar." His rune cracked and flaked off. Riley refused. She drove the stick into the ground. The rune on her skin burned bright crimson, then a shimmering doorway opened in the dark tree-line. Riley stumbled through the portal. We chased her into a corridor of living glyphs, walls formed by intertwining roots that pulsed with runic light. At the far end stood Riley, eyes vacant, a new rune carved on her chest. "Keeper." She spoke in a voice not her own. "The forest writes itself anew. You cannot escape the narrative." The roots shifted, sealing the portal behind us. Now there was only one path, into the heart of the forest. We emerged at a vast clearing. Moonlight revealed a massive sigil carved into the earth, dozens of runes forming a circle over 100 feet across. At its center lay a shallow pit lined with smooth stones. The air crackled with energy as the runes we'd seen fell from the trees, drifting into the pit. I stepped forward, trembling, and whispered my confession. "I betrayed my brother." The moment the words left my lips, the pit glowed, then erupted in a plume of rune-laced mist that coalesced into a dark figure, a humanoid silhouette inscribed with all our confessed words. It hissed, "Now I live." The being advanced. Mina drew a circle of salt around us, but the figure brushed it away with a wave, salt crumbling like ash. Haruto raised his hands and murmured counter-runes, but each symbol he traced in the air dissolved. Riley appeared at the edge of the clearing, her rune gate closing behind her. She lifted her hand, now glowing runes spelled, "Sacrifice." She stepped toward the figure. "Take me instead," she said. In an instant, the figure lunged, absorbing her into its shape. Riley vanished. The figure now bore her rune carved across its chest. Mina and Haruto fled into the trees, dragging me behind. Runic lights blinked out one by one above us. By dawn, we emerged at our original campsite, untouched, as if nothing had happened. On the ground lay the charcoal stick, snapped in two. On my forearm, the rune, anchored, had vanished. But when I looked back, a single rune remained etched on the tent flap in glimmering script. Reader, if you see glowing runes in the forest, and feel the need to write them down, don't. Because in Camp Glyphfall the forest tells its own story, and anyone who adds a word becomes part of the story forever. Don't forget to like the video, and don't forget to check out my other horror stories. Have you ever called out into a canyon and heard your own voice reply before you even spoke? Have you ever heard an echo whisper your future and wondered if you could outrun fate? And what would you do if every sound you made drew something closer, something that thrives on your fear? Tonight's story brings you to Camp Echo Canyon, where every shout, every laugh, and every secret is recorded by the rock walls, and one day, it answers back. If you crave fresh, spine-tingling campfire horror stories, please subscribe. It's completely free, and helps me hit 500 subscribers so I can keep delivering new nightmares straight to your headphones. Now, turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and let's venture into Camp Echo Canyon. I'm Dr. Sofia Martinez. I study ancient echo chambers, canyons and caves where sound behaves in impossible ways. I organized an expedition to Echo Canyon in New Mexico after campers reported echoes that predicted accidents, hours before they happened. At our first campsite, Kaito set up microphones facing the canyon walls. We each called out our names. S-O-Phi, K-I-T-O, A-N-Y-A, L-U-C-S. A moment later, our voices returned, stretched, trembling, and then each echo added a single extra word. S-O-Phi, help, K-I-T-O, run, A-N-Y, trapped, L-U-C-S, listen. We froze. The canyon had never heard our voices. With warnings like that, we knew it was listening. Anya examined the towering sandstone walls. She traced grooves and ancient petroglyphs etched into the stone. Symbols of watchers, of judgment. Carvings of lost travelers, faces frozen in shock. She warned. This canyon was a site of sacrifice. People begged the walls to spare them, but the walls took their voices instead. That night, Lucas led us in a campfire game. Echo prophecies. One by one, we shouted common phrases. Good night. Echo. Good night. Alone. See you in the morning. Morning. Never. I'm hungry. Hungry. Teode. When it was my turn, I whispered. I love you. The echo returned. Love. Lies. A cold dread settled over the group. At 3:07 a.m., Kaito's recorder chimed with a new message, one none of us spoke. You will die 3 hours. We tracked time by our watches. Exactly 180 minutes remained. Panic took hold. Lucas insisted we pack up and hike out immediately. But every direction led back to camp, our paths looping in on themselves like a spiral. As midnight approached again, Anya climbed the canyon ridge, hoping to spot a goat trail. She called out, Anya! Help me! Her echo came back instantly. Help! Not! She ran back, pale. Her eyes darted to the shadows. She whispered, It's here! We realized the echoes weren't just sounds, they were hunting us, narrowing in by name. At 4:45 a.m., the canyon walls groaned, tiny rock fragments falling like rain. The echoes began to fragment words, repeating syllables. So, Phi, 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 My heart thundered. The canyon was calling my name again, more urgently this time. With 10 minutes left, Lucas challenged the canyon. Show yourself! Silence roared through the rocks. Then, as one, the walls ejected a cloud of red dust, ancient sandstone mixed with something darker. When the dust cleared, dozens of tiny petroglyphs, our faces, were carved fresh into every surface, mouths open in silent screams. Among them, a single line. Say your goodbyes. At exactly 6:07 a.m., our watches stopped. The sun crept over the rim, and the echoes fell silent. We were all still alive, no physical harm. But our voices refused to leave our throats. Each attempt to speak returned only a hollow whisper. Lucas stepped forward and tapped the canyon wall. He heard his own voice. Alone. he crumpled. We packed our gear in complete silence. No goodbyes, no questions. Without speaking, we navigated the winding trails until the canyon led us through a narrow break. At the parking area, I tried to call out to our rescuers. Only a faint echo answered. Forever. I turned off my recorder and drove away, our names erased from every echoing rock. If you ever camp in Echo Canyon, and you hear your name answered back with a warning, heed it. Because at Camp Echo Canyon, the walls don't just echo your voice. They echo your fate. Don't forget to like the video and don't forget to check out my other horror stories.